Hello. I'm going to try to finish this. I was going to wait till the end of the semester because I was busy. The problem with taking 5 classes in one semester is that you have exams every week. I wasn't used to that. Because beforehand I took language classes, and language classes are 5 credit hours. So I was used to only taking 4 classes at a time. So exams weren't that frequent. So I was too busy this semester to finish this. But now the semester's over, so I'm going to finish this. And if you're wondering, my grades, I got 2 A's and 3 B's. I got an A in moral issues, an A in formal logic, and the things I got B in were American literature, political theory, and art history. Basically, I'm going to talk about the social contract version. I have a sore throat, so I might cut this short and do a part 2 later. But anyway, the type of social contract we learned in the class was very different than the social contract that you've probably heard. I'm assuming most of you are internet libertarians listening to this. So the social contract you've heard of is way different than the one argued for in class, and I really understand. I'm starting to think that the social contract you've all heard of is incorrect. Basically, that's why I'm going to make the distinction between the minimal and maximal social contracts. Also, because of the sore throat, I'm going to be drinking a lot of Starbucks and water if it starts to hurt too much. The minimal social contract is what we learned in class, and the minimal social contract can really be used by libertarians, mainly because taxation isn't involved. You can have a society without, you can practically have an anarchist society with a social contract, so long as you figured out a way to punish people who are usurpers on others. Which is sort of the argument for anarchism anyway, is that no one should be usurping or invading the liberty of others, and the state does that. So we need voluntary associations. That's the argument. I have them somewhere. It's this book. Hopefully I'll be doing videos on. I really much recommend it. Maybe this video was just an excuse to show you it, but it's called this book. Benjamin Tucker. It's a great book. Instead of a book by a man too busy to write one. Anyway, yeah. The minimal social contract, to put it simply, it basically says you can do whatever the heck you want, so long as what you're doing doesn't disrupt order a whole lot. So you could see hookers and smoke pot, but you probably shouldn't do meth, and you shouldn't violate other people. Oh, and the music in the background is called The Crux Shadows. It's pretty awesome. So yeah. The most interesting argument I mentioned in these other videos is the prisoner's dilemma. Basically, you and another guy are taken prisoner, and you're told if you confess and the other guy confesses, you both get a year. If neither of you confess, you go free. If you confess and he doesn't, then he'll get 10 years and you'll get like 5 or something like that. And if he confesses and if you confess and he doesn't confess, he goes free, you get 10 years. If you do not confess and he confesses, you go free and the other person gets 10 years. The point is that if the whole purpose is self-interest, you should confess, because if overall you get the least amount of years, right? Which is that you both, if neither of you confess, you could both get a year. If you both confess, you get 5 years. So you get the third best option, which is 5 years, because rationally you'll both want to confess. But if you could get people to, get the people to cooperate, then you can get them to cooperate, and also have a way to enforce this agreement. You'll be able to go with the second best option, which is neither one of you confessing and you both getting 1 year. What the heck does this have to do with the social contract? Well, basically, what it says is all it says is that what's important in morality is to be able to get people to cooperate with each other without reneging on their deals and being jerks and generally being belligerent. That's the whole state of nature thing too with Hobbes, which that's another thing important to point out is that when it comes to Hobbes' state of nature, you shouldn't think of it in so terms as if there is no state, this is what Hobbes thinks society should be. Think of it more in theoretical terms. Think of it more in terms of Hobbes' state of nature as what would happen if no one cooperated and no one had any way to enforce their deals. Which I know ANCAPs are going to be all like, yeah, they could hire people. Well, that's not the point. Think it theoretically. What if that happened? And see, this is the next step is that you come up with some sort of social mechanism to make it to where people can enforce their contracts and feel protected. And the whole purpose is self-interest. People are self-interested by nature, and the whole basis of morality is self-interest. So because of that, we have to build up a minimum structure to where people can live in a society with each other, being wholly self-interested, and things go smoothly. That's why we skipped the ethical egoism chapter in this book and went straight for the social contract. And that's another thing too. The difference between how the minimal and the maximal social contract is argued for. The minimal social contract, which I kind of like, is basically self-interest. It's in your interest. It's in mine. It's in everyone's interests. We'll all be better off in the long run if we can have some sort of mechanism to protect people's property and to enforce contracts. And that's basically all it says. The maximal, on the other hand, I've got to define it. The maximal social contract basically says, by living in society, we accept certain rules. It's kind of what the minimal says, except the minimal gives you some idea of what the rules are, in a pleasant way. I mean, it gives you rules that make sense. It's more concrete, in my opinion, because the maximal contract will say those rules are whatever the state says. You might think, well, that's not vague, but to me it's vague because the state can make any kinds of rules for the most part. That doesn't really give enough definition of what the rules are the state can make. Yeah, it's a big difference. The minimal says just enough for people to not stab each other in the face with axes and not renege on deals. So just the bare minimum. Morality is just everything that we think of that's moral is not moral. It's preferences for the most part. So like imagine this is what like Christian ethics puts everything in these between my hands as terms of morality is moral questions. So think like this whole part is like prostitution, homosexuality, stuff like that. The minimal social contract says no, those are all preferences. Those actually, everything over here is not part of morality at all. Only this little section here has to do with morality, and all you have to do is worry about getting this done. And this right here is just not being a jerk. The minimal social contract really is that small commandment: don't be a dick. That's really all. That's all the social contract is. Don't be a dick, because it ain't good for you, ain't good enough for nobody. It doesn't say don't do this or that in the bedroom. Just don't be a jerk. Let everyone do their own thing. Let bygones be bygones. And that's why I think that the minimal social contract can be very useful to libertarians, and I don't see why. I think the only reason why libertarians don't like the social contract is because they don't realize the very, 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 very libertarian nature and tendency of the social contract theory, and because they haven't read it themselves, or they read it within the light of the way it's been presented to them. So they hear statists talk about the social contract in terms of what the state says goes, what the state says, that's a part of the social contract. The state is in charge of adding things to the social contract. So when they try to study the social contract, they see it in that light, and they get confused, and they think the social contract is just statism. And also, the social contract never actually refers to an actual physical document, so I don't know. I'm just gonna put screw you if you put I didn't sign no contract at the bottom, because that's not the point. It's a social contract is a theoretical contract. It's not referring to an actual binding contract that's saying you must do this or that. Which I guess that's another thing from the if you're thinking in terms of the status maximal social contract, it's easier to think of the contract in terms of binding what your actions are. The minimal isn't really so much about binding your actions, it's more about keeping you from binding actions of others or reneging on your deals. So it's very libertarian. I hope libertarians don't give up on the social contract, those who do believe in it. I think the social contract can be very useful for libertarians. In fact, I think it should be incorporated into libertarianism. In fact, I think libertarians should steal it from the statists. Just the social contract, wait, that's ours, and just snag it. In fact, I think that's what we should do. We should snag social contract theory, and we should snag utilitarianism. Just sort of try and get in and take those and influence them. Instead of retardedly writing I didn't sign no contract at the end comments, which I think some of you, if you're as much a troll as I am, are probably going to write I didn't sign no contract at the bottom, just the troll. I'm going to preempt you, I think, by writing that in the description. Maybe not. There's not really much more to add. This is the book I got it from. More videos coming, probably not today, because if you make too many videos in a row, no one watches it. That's pretty much it. So I'll see you later.